starting off with the problem that we're facing, underserved groups as defined by the U.S. Human and Health Services Department include U.S. minorities, such as African American and Hispanic populations, along with immigrants with limited English proficiency. And these groups do not access healthcare as often as they need to. And some of these reasons include barriers such as economic and transportation. For example, to see a primary care provider, it requires making an appointment, arranging for time off of work, or arranging for childcare, and then ensuring that you have transportation to the office. Additionally, patients aren't sure when their symptoms actually warrant a visit and when they should overcome those barriers. Additionally, this patient population has limited medical education, so they're not empowered to prioritize their health, and they also don't know how to navigate the healthcare system, whether or not they need to see different types of doctors or if they need a referral. Additionally, there's a lot of medical mistrust due to historical and their own mistreatment. In a genetics survey, 2/3 of Hispanic and African American populations reported that they distrust the medical system. And some of this mistreatment may be tied to the underrepresentation in clinical trials. Hispanic populations make up less than 10%, and African American populations make up less than 5%. And it's important to have representation in clinical trials so that researchers can understand the safety of a treatment and also how that will affect a diverse population. While this is a huge multifaceted problem, our recommendation to make progress towards this is Optum Rewards, an incentivized health data collection app that would increase the user's understanding of how their health is changing over time and what warrants a visit to the doctor's office. And also, Optum will be able to leverage this data on a population that they don't normally have data on to improve quality of care.
All right, so let's dive into what Optum Rewards will actually do. Patient will input their insurance information, and then they can either manually and regularly input their health data or automatically integrate the app with a third-party technology like Whoop or Apple Health. Once that's done, they'll get graphic representation of their health over time, and they'll be able to get ML-generated insights using Optum's vast medical experience. That's what this app is going to have that things like Whoop and Apple Health don't. We'll be able to, because of that medical experience and because we know their insurance information, we'll be able to provide suggestions to users like, it's been a year since your last checkup. Maybe you should see a physician. You're turning 50. It's time for certain other checkups. Or your heart rate, when doing your recent exercise, your heart rate was a lot lower than usual. It might be time to see a doctor. As the user engages with the app, they'll receive points that go towards health-focused rewards like discounts on fitness wearables and devices that could then further improve the value of Optum Rewards or other rewards that might be relevant to the consumer. Optum's also going to get a lot of benefits from this app. One big one is that Optum will be able to expand its data set on underserved populations to improve the value of the Optum Insight services. We think this is going to have a lot of positive knock-on effects throughout the medical industry as other health companies that are using those services can hopefully have a more diverse data set. Additionally, as Optum is able to train their ML models on this new data set, we believe there will be a lot of valuable health insights to be gained. Final benefit is that if a user who's using Optum Rewards has a lot of health data on that has been providing a lot of health data, perhaps goes to the doctor for the first time, now the doctor is going to have a breadth of really valuable information that they can use to provide better treatment to patients that maybe don't come into the doctor's office very often.
So tying this back to the 3 reasons we shared for why this group doesn't access healthcare as often as they need to, how Optum Rewards can help with barriers is that users can be more selective for when they actually need to see a doctor and when they need to overcome these barriers. Additionally, users will be able to choose whatever language they prefer on the app, and they'll even be connected to Optum providers that speak that language. As far as lack of medical education, through the app, users will understand how their health is changing over time, and when they see a physician, they'll better understand the recommendation that the physician is making. Additionally, because the app is recording their data over time, they won't have to advocate for themselves as much because that data is in the app. And finally, for mistrust of the medical system, all of the insights will be from ML that will be data-based and not done by a human. We'll have to ensure that the ML continues to stay unbiased. Additionally, over time, through interaction with the Optum app, users will build trust with Optum, and they'll receive rewards for the simple interactions that they have with the app. Additionally, they'll see that Optum only prioritizes their health because this service will be free. And finally, Optum will have data on these underserved groups that don't access healthcare as often, and they can use this data to improve health outcomes. So shifting gears to our customer persona, Meet Richard Smith. He's a 38-year-old man with 2 children. He and his wife work full-time in blue-collar jobs. They have Medi-Cal, and they rely solely on public transportation. A while back, he and his wife started using Optum Rewards because they were enticed by the discounts on health-related items, specifically the discounts on gym weights. Over time, Richard started noticing a rapid weight gain, and the app starts flagging him as a concern and assists him in making an appointment with an Optum provider. When he meets the Optum provider, he's actually diagnosed with hypothyroidism, a treatable condition, and he's able to get treatment immediately. Because of Optum Rewards, Richard saw a doctor a lot sooner than he normally would have, and this condition did not get worse.
All right, so I'll try and go through this briefly, but this is our implementation roadmap. If we were to start really soon, we can potentially start development in Q1 of 2023 and focus in on building up a team, narrowing the definition of the addressable audience. And then we can start really ramping up development through 2023 and 2024, aiming for a launch in Q1 of 2025. So we estimate that this app will take just over 2 years to build. And then I can call a little focus to our marketing campaign, which we aim to target low-income and underserved populations through using those strategies there. This was fun for me. My background was in software engineering, so I really enjoyed coming up with this part. The startup cost, we estimate that the app will cost about $11 million to develop over the course of 25 months. There'll be yearly fixed maintenance costs and enhancement costs of $4.35 million, mostly paying and continuing to support the development team and enhancing the features, removing bugs, that kind of thing. We foresee an average yearly profit of $11.74 per user. That's net of network and support costs, coming from increased patient engagement that we're able to drive through the app, as well as the additional value we're able to gain per user. We're able to give some of that back to our users in the form of the discounts that we mentioned earlier. We'd emphasize front-loading those front-loading those coupons so that when you immediately sign up or you immediately integrate your Apple Watch or similar device, that you're going to get more rewards for doing that than just the daily logging. If we were able to have an average user base of 3.3 million customers or users, we would break even in 2030 after 5 years of the app's life. And at that time, but we estimate we'll be able to do a lot better than that. An estimated yearly profit of about $16.5 million. There are some roadblocks that we've thought about. Low user engagement, obviously a risk, some botting, other things, but we do think there are strong solutions that can counter these risks. And we're also really excited how this app can grow over time. We mentioned that users would be able to input their own symptoms if they felt something could be problematic. And we want to be able to increase the power and the diversity of that type of verifiable data. And also, we think over time, we can continue to utilize this patient data in more and more powerful ways. Personally, anecdotally, I used to use a Whoop, and it knew that I was sick before I knew I was sick by like 12 hours. And we believe that there's a lot of power there to leverage for really improving health outcomes for everybody.
Kind of have this disconnect between how you started with the barriers and the rewards card. And how is this addressing barriers with a $10 per year incentive for all this data?
That's a great question. Do you want to start that one off, and then I can tell the story, or do you want me to?
You can go. Yeah.
Okay. There are a couple of different types of. There's a case that was really salient. My sort of ulterior motive with this one is the case of my grandmother was really prominent in my mind. So she passed away during COVID, and she had a cancer removed. And there was no follow-up done because of COVID. She thought she was really tough, and there were all these reasons why she didn't want to go to the doctor. One was the cost; she didn't know. Another one is that she didn't drive; she would have had to take the bus, and it was really long. So we imagine that those barriers can be broken down. She did wear an Apple Watch every day. If the Apple Watch had said, "Hey, you went for your daily walk, and your heart rate was a lot higher than it was yesterday. We've noticed these trends. We think you should go to the doctor." That would have been enough to bring her into the doctor for sure. I think that there are a lot of people that can go to the doctor, but barriers might be higher for other ones, and we want to lower those barriers.
How does your app collect the data?
So 2 ways. I think so. One is through manual entry. So a user can enter let's say that they're feeling a specific symptom that has them feeling nervous, then they would select, I'm coughing today. The app might not do anything with that information, or might just say that we expect you to get better, or just track it. Or if they enter something like I'm feeling chest pain, I'm feeling sharp pain in my side, that might cause the app to say, we recommend go to the doctor. The other way that would hopefully be preferable is an automatic integration with wearable devices or third-party health collecting devices like a Whoop, Apple Watch. Once you make that integration, the idea is that the app would be able to pull data from those devices and then share that with a provider and perform that.
So essentially a wellness checker. Have you looked out in the marketplace today to see if there are other wellness checker apps?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are a lot of competitors, if I understand your question correctly. I mentioned Whoop as one of that's a device that monitors a lot of information about your vitals, like blood oxygen and all this other stuff, in addition to steps and all that, and heart rate and everything. But it doesn't have any medical knowledge, which is what would set this apart. Most of these apps have stayed away from the medical space. I think there are obviously the HIPAA, there are challenges with that that we think that Optum as a medical provider would be able to overcome. So to my knowledge, there are no widely used. I think if you think of Apple Watch as one of probably the most prominent, there's no, even though it monitors heart rate, and again, in the case of my grandmother, it monitors heart rate, it has the information, but doesn't have any knowledge, or has very little knowledge of what is actually matters for medical problems.
Well, I also meant there are actually apps that you can talk to, and it will walk you through questions of how you're feeling, and then go back and check against a database that does come from medical resources and data. So that's what I was referring to.
I think in our
They're these chatbot
Yeah,
triage
exactly.
solutions. Yeah, and there's a number of them out in the market.
Yeah, I think in our situation, this would be tied to Optum specifically. So we'd be connecting patients as soon as possible to Optum providers, especially in really urban areas like LA County that has 160 Optum offices. And so that's our goal through this app.
Do any? It said $10 per rewards per year. How much in your research do you need to give someone to not have decay in using an app?
It's a great question. I think that honestly, the $10 we imagine would be, like I mentioned, I think we should front load that. So when patients take the big initial steps, they're getting larger rewards. Hey, you synced your phone that's tracking your steps with the app. Here's sort of a $5 discount that you can use in our Optum store. Once that's done, then on a daily basis, hopefully without thinking about it, we'll continue to be able to get data, and then they'll occasionally get rewards. They'll sort of be reminders as they use it.
And hopefully they'll be enticed initially by the rewards, but through their trust with the Optum app and with Optum, they'd continue to use this. And we'd have to do research on study groups to see how long it would take for them to decay. And also, we were very conservative in our profits, and it may be that we're able to give more than $10 a year.
Some of my questions are also around your 2-year to develop and cost to develop. The $11 million seems a bit high in today, where there's a lot of open source capabilities that are out there that would probably accelerate your ability to create this app.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think doing basic research of how quickly can you build an app, I think average costs range more from $50K to $200K. I imagine that when you're building something of, again, like HIPAA compliance, you're going to need legal advice, ML, building powerful ML models. Again, my background was I can just say from sort of anecdotal experience working on enterprise software where it was in a B2B setting and you really can't have any bugs, and there's a high need for very high quality software. I expect that it'll take longer. But again, these are conservative estimates.
Maybe just one question about, so you're making you know, a lot of your core premise here is around the connected wearables piece. When you think about the underserved population you're trying to address, have you done some research to figure out, I know you had on one of your early slides, you know, the percentage of low income people that have a smartphone, but like also how many of them have a Whoop or an Apple Watch or, you know, any of these other services?
It was a little difficult to find that specifically. And so that's why patients are able to manually enter their data. And ideally through the reward system, we're planning on giving discounts to wearable devices. And so hopefully over time they'd acquire those third-party devices, and that would be more verifiable data for us.
Another thing I would add to that, kind of looking forward, is that as wearables are becoming more and more, you know, the number of people that own these devices is growing pretty rapidly. And obviously, you know, 15 years ago, thinking that 76% of adults making under $30,000 in income would own a smartphone probably seemed pretty crazy. We imagine that segment will continue to grow, and we'll be able to continue to penetrate it pretty quickly.